Are the Ducks ready to go from rebuilding to just building? Patrick, president of Inside the Rink, joins where we have the state of the franchise for the Anaheim Ducks. And we talk about this team that has been rebuilding, if they're ready to take that next step with new coach, some new big pieces, including Carlsson, who they drafted second overall. So all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Sharks.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at Inside the Rink. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly a part of the Locked On Network, where we cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everyday, all you got to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Great news. We'll be back to 5 episodes a week starting on September 18th. So mark your calendars for that, especially with all the stuff that goes right here at the rookie tournament coming up. You've got plenty of good stuff with training camp, plenty of training camp battles. So we'll make sure we have you covered with that. But today we're going to be looking at the Anaheim Ducks and what the Sharks can learn from their rebuild, as they're kind of a couple years ahead of the Sharks. And as they're, again, great line here, taking the out of rebuild. Now they're just building with some of their core pieces. But before we do all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you guys by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or enter promo code LockedOnNHL for a free water bottle with any order. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. And now we bring in Patrick, president of Inside the Hockey, where he covers all things Ducks over there. Patrick, how's it going, buddy?
It's going pretty well, man. It was a hot day today, but I can feel autumn on the horizon and hockey on the horizon with it. Just ready for it,
Yeah, ready for it. But then by like December, it's like, when's the draft going to be here? Because I have a feeling both these teams probably won't be in the playoff. But I think things are starting to hopefully turn around for the Ducks. So let's start there. The state of the Anaheim Ducks franchise. So where are the Ducks at right now?
Yeah, so I think you said it, like there's hope on the horizon. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're still in this rebuild that we've been in for a while now, but there's we all know there's 3 phases to a rebuild. There's, the selling off portion, and then there's the, bottoming out, and then there's the build it back up. And I think I've been kind of workshopping a little tagline, and I think it's time that the Ducks take the out of rebuild, start to really build around all this talent that they've drafted over the last handful of seasons, because it's been, 5 years now of missing the playoffs and drafting in the top 10. And in those picks, we've, the Ducks have drafted Zegras, Drysdale, McTavish, Minchikov, and now Carlsson. So it's time to start really developing these guys and, start building around them, insulating them, and kind of nurturing them as well through this development as we kind of claw our way out of the gutter. And the Ducks social media right now is putting a tagline of their own out there, saying it's a new era of Ducks hockey. Obviously it's my handle, so I'm all for it. We're a year and a half into Pat Verbeek's tenure as general manager, and we're seeing his vision start to come to fruition. He's hired his first NHL head coach, Greg Cronin. All accounts say that, he cast a wide net and searched under every rock to find this guy, and it's his first opportunity. And from what we've seen, he's like a mix of old school, new school. He has he's gonna get blood from a stone and really get the most out of these guys, but at the same time, he's modern in the sense that he's willing to adapt his system to his roster and listen to analytics and things like that. So, between Cronin and Verbeek, and then they hired a new AHL head coach as well for all this young talent coming up. There's like this hive mind emphasis on developing these players. So now it's just time to start, building around them and putting them in positions to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, we can kind of start there with the head coach, and we were talking beforehand. I thought this Ducks team last year, especially with a lot of talent, was going to kind of start to, you mentioned it, going from the, taking the out of the rebuild. I always call it going into that fun, frisky phase of kind of your team building, right? You go from the rebuilding to your fun, frisky to your like contender, and that's you're hoping the Ducks would start to kind of make that transition into a fun, frisky team. But I think the coaching was just terrible on that team last year, right? You look at, especially the special teams, right? They were one of the worst special teams units, and it shouldn't be that way, especially with all the talent. I know they're young players, McTavish, Zegras. I know Drysdale missed basically the entire season last year, but like it felt like this team was just underperforming, and they ended up getting the second pick in the draft out of it, which we'll get to the draft here in a couple of minutes, but. How much do you think just maybe a fresh voice is going to do so much for this team heading into this year?
I think they desperately, I think they were missing the leader in the room, Ryan Getzlaf, who it was his first year after retirement last year. But I think less of a stale voice, because Eakin's kind of, he gets the guys to compete. He's just not, I don't want to talk too poorly about him, but he's just not the tactician that team needed, and that on ice structure that team needed. And, he put out a system that was really inconducive to the roster at hand, meaning like they were trying to play like the Carolina Hurricanes when they didn't have that kind of structure, and they should have been more free flowing, like maybe Seattle was, or Ottawa even. And I think just the unwillingness to adapt the system to the roster was a big faux pas last year. And I'm hoping that Greg Cronin, like he seems like a kind of a big hockey nerd. He'll watch like hours of game film a night and really study systems and tactics and analytics and things, and is willing to tweak what he brings, on the chalkboard. So I think that's the biggest thing as far as, the coaching is concerned.
All right. What do you think was the biggest storyline heading into this offseason for the Ducks, other than, of course, the search for a new head coach?
Yeah, there were a couple, but the one I want to focus on is the restricted free agents. There were four major ones, I think, for the long term of the success of the team. There was Lucas Dostal, who's like the goaltender of the future, heir apparent to John Gibson. They signed him pretty quickly to a 2-year, I think, $800K per year deal.
Yep.
And then Troy Terry, which got solved, like they pushed it right up until the arbitration meeting, like they're about to head into the meeting, and like signed on the dotted line, which is great. It was a good deal for Terry, good for the Ducks. It was 7 years, $7 million per year, but it just was kind of bothersome why it took so long. Like, why are you nickel and diming, a two-time All-Star and one of the lone bright spots on the team? So that was kind of irksome, just because we all knew what that contract was going to look like going into it. And then right now, the guys that haven't been signed are Zegras and Drysdale. Zegras is a kind of similar situation where it's getting a little frustrating because there's been so much precedent around the league on what that contract should look like, right? You want Trevor Zegras on the team for the next 8 seasons, presumably, especially from ownership, because he's the most marketable young player in the league. So, I'm willing to bet that 90% of jersey sales are Trevor Zegras. So he's really important to the team's bottom line.
Yes.
And when you look
90% of Ducks jersey sales. Yeah. Sorry. That would be amazing if
that's what I meant. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I'm very Ducks focused, if you can't tell.
It's all right.
But I just think with Hughes' contract, Caulfield, Boldy, Cousins, Stutzla, like we know it's going to be an 8-year. If it's an 8-year deal, it's going to be like 7.75 or 8.25.
Yeah.
But like at this point, just whatever it takes. And I'm kind of worried he wants the Austin Matthews treatment, the like walk me to free agency type thing. But we'll see. We might end up in an Elias Pettersson, Jason Robertson type deal where his next contract might be pretty pricey. And then Drysdale's the last one. Sorry.
And with Drysdale, no, like I think with him, it's especially with the injury, right? Kind of maybe kicking the can down a little bit and see
Yeah.
how he continues to develop. But like with Zegras, right? You see, and I think this is going to, with the Sharks of William Eklund and Will Smith potentially
Mm-hmm.
can probably going to be the same boat, where you see these young players when they get to these, they finish up their ELCs. Usually it works out for the team when you just sign them to a long-term deal, right? Like,
Yeah.
look at Cale Makar. That deal's aging like fine wine. That deal's going to look
Right.
like a steal here in like 3 years when the cap goes up. Like you said, some of these other guys, like, just pay them through their prime years, and you get into trouble, I think, like what the Sharks used to do with Timo Meier and Tomas Hertl, where you
Mm-hmm.
do these bridge deals, and then all of a sudden they're 27, and you have to try to decide, do I sign them to a long-term deal, compared to getting them through their age 24 through 32 season or something like that. Like that's when those are what smart teams do. I think that's if I'm the Ducks, I'm just trying to sign him to an 8-year deal as soon as I possibly can, because it's going to be, that deal is going to be a steal for you in the future.
Yeah, we're in kind of a tricky situation with it too, because like everyone knows the cap's going to go up. So I'm if I'm him, I don't want an 8-year deal. I want the shorter term. But
Yeah.
like at a certain point, security matters. So honestly, whatever it takes to get him for 8 years, up to, within reason. Like to me, like mid-8s is within reason, especially because the cap is going up.
Yeah, it totally makes sense, right? And I think it's going to be very interesting to see for a Shark spin of it, what Mike Grier does when he's got to start to kind of re-sign several years from now. But what Mike Grier is going to have to do when he has to re-sign the core pieces to the Sharks pool here soon. So
exactly.
All right, guys, before we continue with Patrick, we talked about the offseason that was. We talked about the draft, of course, drafting Leo Carlsson, some of the moves that the Ducks made this offseason. I do want to let you guys know about our good friends over at Bird Dogs. And if you're like me, right, it is, we're winding down the days of summer here and the great weather. But you need a pair of shorts that can cover no matter what you do, right? Maybe Saturday morning, you're running around with the kids you got a bunch of sporting events you got to go to. You got to go to Target, you got to go to Costco. Maybe you're out at the brewery in the evening. Maybe you're over at some friend's house. You need a pair of shorts that can cover anything you're doing and make you look good. Bird Dog's the way to go. They have anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day. They're functional for every occasion. Like I said, right? Wearing my Bird Dogs all weekend long. And the built-in underwear, very skeptical at first, but they are great. They keep you cooler, keep you drier, keep things from itching and bunching up. And again, they just feel great. I'm wearing some right now. So go check out Bird Dogs. Make sure you guys go birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or use the promo code LockedOnNHL. They'll send you a free water bottle with any purchase. Again, use the promo code LockedOnNHL. Get that free water bottle. You won't want to take off your Bird Dogs. We promise you. Let's talk about the draft. So, of course, the Ducks had the first overall odds. Of course, we all know the draft was rigged and Chicago won it because us California kids, we can't have anything nice. But everyone was like, Adam Fantilli. How shocked were you when the Ducks picked Leo Carlsson?
Mildly, maybe more than mildly, because we'd heard for months Bedard 1, Fantilli 2, Carlsson 3. About a month out, we started hearing rumblings saying, this might not be the slam dunk number 2 overall pick. Verbeek might go a different direction. He might have some tricks up his sleeve. And then those just got louder in the weeks and days and hours leading into the draft. And lo and behold, Carlsson was the pick. And honestly, a little disappointed. But I got over that very quickly, just because
he's very good.
Yes. Exactly. And honestly, what kind of helped was how confident Pat Verbeek and the scouting staff were that to go that far against consensus. Not that it's a huge stretch, but against consensus nonetheless. And it just shows that they had confidence in the player and themselves as scouts. And it kind of gave me confidence in return. And it's not hard to see why. He's the size, the two-way ability, puck protection. He's like the whole package. The IQ is the thing that stands out. I say he's like playing chess for the entire game. He's thinking a couple steps ahead all the time, and I just think that's obviously what they valued when they selected him. So again, not hard to talk yourself into that pick. And yeah, his development is going to be very important. Obviously, he's SHL, AHL, or NHL eligible. So they just need to handle his development this season, especially with the utmost care and very calculated approach. I would take with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this is, sorry.
No, it's fine. I was going to say, it's going to be very interesting. Do they send him back to the SHL where he, was putting up numbers we had not seen from a player of his age in the SHL? Do you let him come play in the backyard down in San Diego, where you can kind of keep him close to home, let him get used to the NHL, kind of the North American game, right? Because there's always that kind of transition,
Yep.
Kind of a little bit more physical game in North America. Or if he's ready, do you just throw him in there and see what happens? And he's already signed his ELC, right? So he can play whatever he wants there. So yeah, it's gonna be really intriguing. But you think back to even a couple of years ago when the Ducks picked McTavish, and even at the time that at number 3, a lot of people thought that might have been a bit of a reach there. But
right.
McTavish is looking like an outstanding pick for the Ducks right now. And maybe you just trust the Ducks to pick centers because they just seem to be really good at it right now. So
centers and D.
Centers and D, yes. And even goalies, you guys have
goalies too.
Yeah, they're just good at picking players. I guess when you have a lot of top end, you get a few cracks at it, you probably get pretty good at it. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see what the Ducks do with Carlsson this year, because it feels like they've been, wanting to kind of build this thing right. You don't want to rush him, but at the same time, like I know the franchise isn't, like we kind of talked about before, the franchise isn't supposed to start winning, but at some point, like you'd like to see some progress with these guys, and Leo Carlsson is going to be a huge, huge part of that going forward.
Yeah, very important piece. Like maybe the most important pick in franchise history, to be honest, just based on how stacked this draft was at the top end throughout. So yeah, I think just whatever decision they make, and I think Verbeek has come out and said, like, we're going to try him in the NHL, whether that's preseason, the 9 games, and then we're going to see if that sticks. If not, he'll try out in the AHL or try some games in the AHL. If that doesn't stick, back to the SHL, which is fine. Just whatever happens, they need to have a game plan. If he does so well at whatever level, then adjust accordingly, I would say. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You don't want to Shane Wright him where he's like playing for 4 different teams in a season, right? Type of thing. And Shane Wright's probably still going to turn out perfectly fine, but it's just tough for these, 18-year-old kids to kind of go through that process of like let them stick and simmer for a little bit and kind of figure out their thing.
Yeah.
So
there's the philosophy of like, you don't want to rush them, but you don't want to like way over marinate them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You don't want to, don't hold them back, but don't. So, and then the rest of the draft will kind of cut some of the guys. Nico Majatovic, who I loved. The Ducks picked at number 33 overall, the second round. They also picked Damian Clara, the first Italian-born goalie in the second round. So I think, again, the Ducks just kind of trust their drafting. They're probably going to be pretty good, especially any defenseman who they pick is just going to be amazing because they just pick amazing defensemen at all times. But overall thoughts on the draft?
I thought, when you look at how many picks the Ducks had in this draft, and they were obviously, their defense pipeline was pretty good. You can kind of focus on forwards. I thought it was very interesting, the Majatovic pick. As well as later in the second round, they took Carey Terrence, another forward, and at the top of the third, Colson Pitre, another forward. And I just want to focus on them because they bring like a similar skill set, and where they're like high motor, forechecking, kind of, small area guys who can finish and, are physical. And when you think about who you want to surround your Zegras and McTavishes with, I think you want a player who, can go get the puck and give it to me in space and get to the net and bang home some rebounds. And, I think that's what they bring. And I think that was a very interesting, calculated strategy that they took.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Again, like you said, you feel really good about their blue line pipeline. Spend some assets on the forwards and see if you can continue to insulate around some of your star players, finding those kind of pieces that fit with who you think are going to be long term guys. So let's head over to free agency, where the Ducks had some money to spend, and they did sign some guys. So I think who do you think was the biggest signing? I'll let you pick.
I mean, there were two, but the biggest one I think is Killorn. Just
Okay.
4 years at 6.25 million per year. It jumps out at you, but like we just talked about with those three players that they drafted, he's kind of the guy that's gonna go win a battle in the corner and get to the front of the net and be responsible defensively. And he brings that veteran presence that you need. And, again, between him and Gudis, they've represented the other, free agent that they signed. But they represented the last 4 Stanley Cup final appearances. So yeah, that's just what they're going to bring is, yes, they're going to be tough SOBs to play against. But I think it's a little more than that, just based on like how they play. I think it's very complementary to the pieces you need to help right now.
Yeah, and like you said, having those veteran guys who've kind of been there, done that, right? And I think it's always interesting how teams kind of approach this rebuild, right? You kind of have like a team like the Senators, right, who've kind of moving into that fun, frisky phase, but they don't really have a lot of veteran guys, right? It's kind of like letting all these kids kind of figure it out themselves. And then you have, like the Ducks here, where they have a lot of young guys, but then they've also have some of these veteran guys who've kind of been there and done that and kind of show the way for these guys and still be assets for them, not that these guys aren't just kind of riding around hanging out with them. But, I think it's really interesting, different approach. And I'm more, in that way of like having adults in the room to help you kind of figure things out. I think it goes a long way for your team. So what do you think is the biggest question remaining for the Ducks in free agency? I know, again, we're not expecting the Ducks to be, a playoff type of team, but as you, again, take the out of rebuild, what do you think some areas that they might try to address here as we head into the training camp?
Well, there's a big one. Elephant in the room is John Gibson. He has formally, I guess, requested a trade. He may or may not have said some things to people in the media that have been disputed. But I just think I kind of equate where Gibson is now to where Erik Karlsson was last year, in the sense that if you look at Erik Karlsson a year ago, that's an untradeable contract. He's not the player he used to be. 100 points in a Norris Trophy later, he's out the door for a first round pick and 3 players. And you can quibble with the return. I kind of really liked it for the Sharks, but
it's fine.
I mean, if you can flip those players, then
you basically
Karlsson,
get out of Karlsson's deal 2 years sooner. It's kind of the equivalence, but yes. Anyway,
saving $40 million over 4 years is pretty good.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the same thing with Gibson, is that I think if he can reestablish some of his value throughout the league, because it's like, I know I'm a homer, but I still think there's talent there. He's a very talented goalie. I would put him borderline elite, but he was, again, just in such a terrible, terrible situation last season. And in the previous handful, that I think I know the stats aren't good, the analytics aren't good, but I think the Ducks were so bad that they kind of broke those models. You know what I mean? Because I was watching Gibson under a microscope, and I'll tell you that like 95% of the goals he let in were unstoppable, like backdoor tap-ins, cross ice one-timers, breakaways, screens, tips, all of it. So he's better than his numbers, and I think if his numbers can improve under a better coach and in front of a better defense, then he might establish some of the value he's lost over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I think John Gibson could still be a really good goalie for a team. I could see him, behind a, kind of cup winning, talented team. But yeah, like if doesn't matter who's in front of you, if it's a train wreck, and you could have Patrick Waugh back there, and it's not going to matter. Like we've watched basically the same team for the past 2 seasons or past couple seasons. They're both bad, and they both give up a lot of terror. They put their goalies in a lot of terrible situations here. So it's going to be intriguing what they do with him, because you could probably get again, we'll see. But if you look at a team like LA right across the, just up the highway, whose goaltending looks super shaky to me going into this season.
Yeah.
And fun fact, the Sharks are paying more to Martin Jones to not play hockey than the Kings are playing for both their goalies combined this season.
That's insane.
But yeah, like I think you could, I know he's got a couple years left on his contract, but you could potentially get a nice little haul for him if he has a good beginning of the season, trade him at the trade deadline, and then kind of go from there. Or maybe fresh coach, maybe new beginnings with the team, maybe reinvigorates Gibson. He finds his love again for Anaheim. And
that's not unheard of. Yeah.
Water under the bridge. Players get upset all the time and end up staying. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think that's one of the big storylines for this upcoming season is Gibson, and then of course Hellebuyck up in Winnipeg. What happens to both those guys? So, all right, guys. Before we finish up with Patrick and we talk about the Ducks and if they can start to kind of crawl out of the basement of the Pacific. And maybe be the sixth worst team in the Pacific instead of being the last team. Do, though, want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, and we'll be back to 5 days a week starting September 18th. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts, or you can subscribe on YouTube as well. Got plenty of good stuff coming up as we start getting ready for the Rookie Face-Off tournament. We're going to finish up our State of the Franchise with the Vegas Golden Knights coming up here soon as well. So again, you don't want to miss any of that, especially with all the big training camp battles coming up this training camp, and a very intriguing training camp for the Sharks. So again, make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts, and of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. All right, what is looking ahead to the 2023-2024 season? What is the best case and worst case scenarios for the Ducks this year?
Well, best case standings aside, I just want to see the young players progress. Like the guys in the young players already in the NHL, but also the AHL. I think that's the biggest thing. They've stated that themselves. And if the team responding well to Greg Cronin and him implementing a system that is conducive to the roster will go a long way. That's part of the best case scenario. And then also playing meaningful games later in the season is the benchmark, I think. I want the Ducks to be this season where Buffalo was last season, or Detroit, Ottawa, maybe not to New Jersey's level, but like they shocked some people. No one expected them to do what they did. Yeah. But kind of take those next steps. And if all things go right, I'd like to not have to scout the top of the draft in November.
I don't be picking in the teens this year. Like,
yeah. Like as much as fun as that is, as it's been for the last 5 seasons, I don't want to be watching Macklin Celebrini and Demidov and Keiserman. And
I do. I'm so excited.
I know you do. I would too. But I might still, but I just don't want to do it in November. I want to play meaningful games through the new year and maybe the All-Star break. And draft anywhere between 8 and 15. 13, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That feels like, especially where we've seen the Ducks the past couple of seasons, and you're playing meaningful hockey. You're a fun team to watch, right? You see the young guys play, you can see the future, and then you go into next offseason, you're going to have a ton of cap space still again. I think the Ducks are projected to have $44 million in cap space. Granted, they still have a Zegras contract they got to hand out, but they're going to have plenty of cap space if they want to be aggressive in what should be a much better free agency class next year, where then you can start to kind of make some moves and start to kind of, join that fun, frisky group. So I assume the worst case scenario is the Ducks are picking in the top 3 again, right?
That's not necessarily worst case, as long as, again, the younger players progress, and that if we find Cronin's the guy, then we're in a good spot. But I think worst case is that Greg Cronin clashes as the new head coach with the star players, and the young players don't make the steps they need, and Carlsson struggles wherever he plays, because especially Cronin and Carlsson, because if we start to question those two things, those are the Verbeek's two biggest moves, the ones he's stuck his neck out for and banged his fist for. And if those two are coming into question in year one of them in the organization, then we have to start questioning Pat Verbeek, and then where it's just like a spiral. So let's avoid that.
Especially if Fantilli is like burning down the league over in Columbus, and then you're going to be, there's going to be a lot of questions quickly. So, all right. The Ducks have a ton of young players, but who do you think is the impact rookie or young player for this team this year?
I mean, it's Carlsson, but I'll go a different direction. Dostal is going to be important. McTavish is going to be important. I'm going to highlight Jamie Drysdale, though. He did miss most of last season, all but 8 games. He made a lot of strides in those 8 games, though. Noticeable ones, like the things that were plaguing him in his rookie year were things like getting beat out of corners and getting bullied in front of the net. He respected the Austin Matthews and Nathan McKinnons of the world a little bit too much. And those problems seemed to deaden in his sophomore season. And he did put up 32 points as a rookie, which is pretty good for a defenseman.
Yes.
So I think if he can get his development back on track, and then because he's kind of forgotten in this Ducks prospect pool that has Olin Zellweger and Pavel Minchukov, Tristan Luneau, I can go on and on. Yes. But he kind of gets forgotten, and I think he still has this two-way electric ability to, maybe not be a power play 1 or PK1 guy, but be PP2, PK2,
like a souped-up version of like your second,
be like a Jared Spurgeon with like a little more dynamic ability, and a true top pair guy. I think if he can kind of realize that potential and get a little bit more aggressive and assertive. He has the elite tools. He just needs, a little more dog.
A little more
but
dog.
I think, and then if he can, realize his potential, they have like just another stud back there on defense. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do this season coming back off this injury.
All right. Who's the Ducks' most important player this year?
Carlsson. No. I'll say Troy Terry.
Okay. He just signed that big contract. Let's keep it going.
He just signed a big contract. I think he seems like the heir apparent to Ryan Getzlaf to wear the C in Anaheim, I think, just because he's well-spoken and smart guy. He's a student of the game. But he's a nice little bridge between the veterans, the, Fowler, Killorns, and the young guys, the McTavish, Zegras. So if he can kind of be that voice in the room that they lacked last season, for sure, I think it's going to go a long way toward the future of the franchise.
Makes sense. All right, last question. Where do the Ducks finish in the Pacific this year?
It's funny. Like I'm so optimistic that they're going to be like maybe pushing for a playoff spot. Doubt it. No. But that's optimistic. But drafting later. But then I look around the league and I see their roster comparatively. I'm like, maybe there's like 3 teams that are for sure worse. There's like San Jose. No offense. Chicago.
No, I want the Sharks picking number 1, baby. Let's do it. So yes.
But San Jose, Chicago, Philly are the teams that are for sure worse, and then maybe Montreal, Arizona, Nashville. But so when I'm like, where do they finish in the Pacific? The smart money is 7, just above San Jose. But the optimist in me will say 5 or 6. I'll say 6.
You'll say 6. All right. They'll jump San Jose. Who else you got them jumping then?
So I was struggling just because it's very cliche and chalky to be like, okay, Edmonton, Vegas, LA at the top, and then there's 3 teams in the middle and then the 2 at the bottom. But someone's going to surprise one way or the other. So I have either Vancouver or Calgary. One of those teams is going to be awesome out of nowhere, and one of them is going to be terrible. That's just my prediction, just my fun little prediction.
Yep.
But stuff like that happens every year. So I'm going to say Calgary falls off. Just like sense. New coach, new GM, so many pending unrestricted free agents that maybe they just bail on the season, you know what I mean, and retool. So
yeah, I think you could see them just pushing the rebuild, rebuild button in the middle of the season, and then just kind of fully lean into it. So
I'm
and I
not
think
rooting for that, but yeah, I can just see it happening.
yeah, and I think with Vancouver, they have so many good players. Like, Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes. Like, you have so many good players. Like, they should be good, but that
Yeah.
franchise is just so chaotic. And at one year is just going to finally click, or Elias Pettersson is just going to go freaking insane and just snap and just leave everybody. Just on that team. So be like, I'm
Yeah,
done with this place.
There's too much talent on that team, and I don't know why they can't put it together. But maybe this is the year. He's in Pedersen's in a contract year, I think.
Yeah, he's an RFA though. Yeah, he's RFA after this year, and he's going to get all the money. So
exactly,
he deserves all the money. Yeah,
he does. So, and then Demko on the back, like I like bringing in Philip Hronik too. So there's a lot of talent there. Hopefully, I mean, maybe not hopefully, but they can make a jump if everything goes right.
Yeah. Patrick, you said it all. Where can the people find you, buddy?
You can find my writing at insidetherink.com. It's been a little slow lately, but it'll pick up obviously in the next month or so. And then on social media, wherever, at New Era Ducks.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you again soon. I'm sure once the draft profiles start rolling around, I'm sure you'll be back on at some point. So,
and just because I don't want to watch Mac and Celebrini film doesn't mean I won't.
Oh, you're totally
I'm just
gonna watch
addicted.
Mac.
Yeah, I'm a nerd. So,
yeah. I mean, he's going. The storyline makes too much sense. He played for the Junior Sharks. He's going to Boston. Like, my career is just ready to trade the farm to get Celebrini on the Sharks. So
enjoy that. That's going to be great.
Yeah, Celebrini and Smith. Let's go, baby. So, awesome. Patrick, we'll talk again soon, buddy.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Patrick. I think for the Ducks, you're going to just see such a huge coaching improvement for them. And I think that was a big issue with them last year is they have talented players, right? You got Zegras, you got McTavish. I know Drysdale was hurt last year. Whatever they do with Leo Carlsson, like, there's talented players on this team, and I think the coaching held them back last year. So I expect to see them kind of make a nice little jump. Again, not be one of like a playoff team, but you could see this team being, kind of picking around 10th in the draft instead of being the worst team in the NHL this year. And then kind of start to build on that as Leo Carlsson and they start to get some of their other defensive prospects making their way onto the team. But again, like, you can see the foundation for the Ducks to be competitive here the next couple seasons. And I can't wait for competitive Ducks Sharks hockey again in a couple years, where the stakes actually mean something other than who's going to be picking last in the draft. So nothing like Ducks Sharks. Just let's bring it back. Let's make California hockey good again. The Kings have done their part to make California hockey good again. The Sharks and the Ducks, they just need to get their acts together here. So next couple of seasons. But again, thank you to Patrick for jumping on and chatting with me. Make sure you go and check out his stuff over at Inside the Rink. But yeah, that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back next week on our last week of 3 episodes a week, and then we're back to full time after that. So again, make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts, and of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Locked On Sharks. You can follow me on Twitter and Threads at MyFryHole. Until next week, bye, friends.